Hey, welcome to Clarity Tarot, and today's pick a card is going to be, what are your spiritual gifts? I'm really curious to see what will come out here, and we have 5 different piles. I'm going to be pulling from this deck of Enneagram reflection cards. This deck is for type 4, but I find them pretty general, so I think it's still gonna work. I just went with what I was called to assemble the piles with, and that was one that spoke to me. And then we also have the Light Seers Tarot and the Language of Letting Go cards from Melody Beattie, another one of my faves. So we're gonna look into your spiritual gifts. And if you're here and you're like, well, I don't know that I'm intuitive or psychic, or I'm thinking that this is going to be much more general than just that. Sometimes in the spiritual community, we talk about spiritual gifts as if you're really intuitive, if you can manifest, if you can read tarot, if you're psychic, if you're a medium. But I think there's a lot of other ways that spirit moves through us and that we work with, even some really practical ways. So we're going to just see what comes out and what spirit wants you to know about what your gifts are. And let's look at our piles. So we have pile 1 with the Sun card as one of your cards in the reading. Pile 2 is King of Cups. Pile 3 is 6 of Cups. Pile 4, the High Priestess. And pile 5, the King of Wands. Check the description box for your timestamp, and I will see you at your reading. Okay, pile 1, if you pick the Sun card, let's see what cards you have, and we're looking at your spiritual gifts. The Sun, Temperance, 6 of Swords, Approving of myself, and I set healthy boundaries that support my highest self. So, to start, you could be a fire sign. We have Leo and Sagittarius here with the Sun and Temperance, but you don't have to be. Let's zoom in here just a bit more. Yeah, I like that a little better. Your spiritual gifts. So what's coming through is the ability to move on, to allow change into your life, to transform, to level up, to know that if you're a caterpillar and you're going into the cocoon, into the chrysalis, or what have you, that is what nature, what evolution, what spirit has asked you to do, and there will be something positive on the other side. You don't fight the changes that you notice coming into your life. You also don't decide that this or that about you or about your life actually means anything about you. You might be a person who believes that no one is better or worse than anyone else. We're all just, different circumstances, but learning the same lessons. And so because of that, a lot of people maybe say that, but are also very sensitive to criticism, to how they're perceived by others. You truly are not attached to that. You know that approval and whether you're on the right path is between you and God. You also know that some of the most amazing people of history have been very much disapproved of, and vice versa. Some people that had massive popularity actually ended up being judged very harshly by history, by posterity later. So you know that as long as you are aligned with what spirit wants you to do, that you're in the right spot. So in terms of a spiritual gift, it's like you are a human compass, a map maker, an explorer, an entrepreneur. And you know what I'm thinking of? It's so funny because this was coming to mind earlier when I was thinking about doing this reading. If there's any others of you out there that grew up in like a conservative Christian church or a missional Christian evangelical church like I did, we used to actually take these tests like a spiritual gifts inventory, and it would tell you if you had the gifts of this or that, like, you know, some of the gifts that are named in the Bible, like the gifts of speaking in tongues, interpreting tongues, but they expanded it. But anyway, one of the gifts that they named in there was the gift of being a missionary, which is interesting. Basically, and the way they talked about it was able to try new things, interested in other ways of being, in other cultures, in travel, in change, and in expanding your horizons. And I thought that was interesting how they had that on there, because it's like more of a job kind of. But anyway, I'm getting something similar with you, not the evangelism part. I don't think you do not strike me as a person who tries to convince anyone else about your point of view or your value system or your faith system. But it's more about sensing within what's true in this moment. Where do we see God or the movement of spirit or the movement of the universe? Where does surrender need to happen, and acceptance, like radical acceptance? And that is the path, and what else needs to be known. So you're a person who's not dogmatic at all and like keeps things really simple. So even if you are a person that has a religion or like a structured sense of how you believe about God, you're not attached to that like many people are. You really have one or two principles that you live by, and this is coming through as a gift in the sense that it's like you're able to keep your connection to spirit the foremost thing. Because it's almost like any decision that comes your way or any moment in life, you can pause and turn within for a moment, check in with spirit, and be like, okay, so what should I do here? Is it a time for me to move, a time for me to stand, to wait? And whatever guidance you get, you go with that, and you don't succumb to peer pressure. You don't do what others say you should do. You don't listen to someone. Again, if you're a religious person, if someone comes to you and says like, well, our religious book says in this situation you should do this or that, you don't listen to that as gospel is the phrase that I'm hearing. There must be one or two of you that have some kind of Christian background, because I'm getting a lot of Christian examples in my brain right now. But the spiritual gift, to describe it again, is it's almost like foresight, like knowing what's coming, except you don't know what's coming. But it looks to others like you do. Like you look like a magician or a person that can see the future. But what it really is this is what it is. You know exactly what vibe you need to be in this moment for things to unfold in their best possible way. And then you just kind of release the results. So I have an example of this. It's more of a business example for like people in sales or entrepreneurs, people with their own businesses. And when you work for yourself, when you're trying to find your own clients, it can be very easy to be in a scarcity mindset and be competitive with other people in your field, try to get clients away from other people, and feel like there's never enough, and do your prospecting or cold calling and do it in a very like aggressive, or like I gotta make this happen kind of mindset. But what's actually, in my opinion, more effective and healthiest in the long term is taking more of an approach of like tending to the environment. So it's actually not my job to make a sale happen. It's my job to create an environment where sales can thrive. So that means like being clear with my potential target audience about what benefits I might provide to them that would make them want to purchase a product or service, being available, providing something that's of high quality, making sure that I'm visible and that they can interact with me or my product or service in a way that meets their needs. And then like continue to ramp all of that up 1% at a time. And that's really an approach to sales. Not like, I got to go talk to 10 people. Well, how are you doing that? And even if you do make a sale, you can't really assess why that happened or how to repeat it. So it's almost like you're doing a similar thing, but spiritually. So you might think to yourself or say to others if they ask you, like, I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know what God wants to do. I don't know what the right thing is. But I know that my relationship to Spirit in this moment calls for me to surrender to what's happening here. Or I know that my relationship to Spirit in this moment calls me to take this specific action. And so that's what I do. So in that way, it's like I was saying, there's one or two things that guide you. It's really pure. It's really simple. It's almost childlike in a way because it's just about that connection. And is that connection solid? It's really quite beautiful, pile one. This is the kind of spiritual relationship where it's like nothing else is needed. You don't need other people, you don't need community, you don't need study, you don't need retreat. Obviously, all those things are important for like a balanced spiritual life, but the most important thing that you need, you have, and that's that open line of communication between Spirit and you. And even if you don't think of it as like communicating between you and a spiritual body, it's something that you sense deep within yourself and you have a really clear knowing about. And that's really cool. I actually want to pull a card about this. I'm curious how other people in your life experience this in you. Like, do they notice that this is true about you? Are they jealous or afraid or like condemning of this in you? I'm wondering. We have 9 of Cups in the reverse. 8 of Pentacles in the reverse. 5 of Swords, 4 of Swords in the reverse, 7 of Wands. So it looks to other people like you're not trying and your spirituality isn't that important to you, which is really kind of funny, pile one, because what I'm getting about you is that like this is your life. Like your spiritual connection, your outlook, it's the most important thing that there is to you. So people don't see you as prioritizing it or as it being a really big deal because you're not efforting. You're not doing the same things that others would that make it look like you're trying really hard. But it's because like you've mastered that. Like that's part of your gift. You know that it's not about pushing a rock uphill. It's truly more just about sensing where to invest your energy and aligning with what God is already doing. Really cool, pile one. Let me know if this resonated for you. I'd be curious to hear if this makes sense to you. Please leave me a like, comment, or subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time. Hey, pile two, if you picked King of Cups, here will be your reading. And we're looking at your spiritual gifts. Thank you so much for being here. 7 of Pentacles, taking risks, setting my own course, and I feel stuck when. Your spiritual gifts. So this is not something I would typically have thought of as a spiritual gift. So it's really cool. Like I'm learning as I'm doing this reading. it's almost like the process of trial and error, or like scientific method in a way, is your spiritual gift. So with these cards about like taking risks, setting my own course, I feel stuck when you have this gift of, if something isn't working, it's like you say to yourself, okay, this isn't working. So the most likely outcome, if I continue to do the same thing, is that I will get the same results. And I know I don't want those same results. So I should just switch things up. And so you do. And so you plant a different seed, and you manage whatever emotional reaction comes up for you. You connect with your God source about it, and things progress. I'm really drawn here. Do you see the hand in each of these cards? The King of Cups with the right hand, and here with the left hand. They're both like popping out at me from these cards as like very big, strong, large hands. And how I'm interpreting that is, it's like you're very quick to take like right action, holy action. This is making me think of actually Enneagram type 9, so which I really get that vibe from King of Cups as well. So Enneagram type 9 is the peacemaker, the idealist. Their gift is really to like smooth things out in the world and in themselves, create harmony and like this idealized togetherness feeling both within themselves as well as in the world. And they bring the wisdom that you don't go out in the middle of a river and try to fight going upstream. Like you go with the flow. And while there are times in life where you need to take a stand, where you need to go a different way, most of the time, the correct and the most spiritual approach is not to fight with your own ego against whatever's happening, but it is to not go along, but adjust, surrender and adjust. So someone who has those skills to also have this sense of when it's time to take a right action, when I do need to put my foot down, when I do need to say, well, no, things have to be this way. It's a very rare combination. It's actually what that type struggles with the most, oftentimes, because obviously if you're so good at going with the flow, then it can be a challenge for you to go against the grain or against the flow in some way. I'm even hearing, as we're talking about this, that perhaps there's a cultural element to this for you as well. So when I think of like cultural dynamics, I think of India as a place that has a lot of this energy naturally of like go with the flow, create the harmony and unity. And I think of America as a place that has the opposite of that, like fight for your rights, stand up, be oppositional, do what you need to do. And so there may be something about you that's very countercultural. So for example, perhaps your culture of origin is India, but even though it's very go with the flow there, you bring a lot of the like stand up for the right action, or vice versa in the US. It doesn't have to be exactly that. You may or may not resonate with that. It's just an example, but I'd be curious if that's standing out for you. So how this is a spiritual gift. It's like you sense the movement of spirit and what wants to happen in any situation, and you're willing to put aside your preferences, your ego, to partner with whatever God wants to happen in that moment. And what I'm really drawn to with this card, that I feel stuck when, and then there's a blank. And so I think you're meant to like write in, like, this is when I feel stuck. That's interesting. But the way that I'm interpreting this in your reading is that you don't feel stuck, because if you begin to have that feeling, then you quickly adjust, you make a change. so that that's no longer going to be an issue for you. And you don't have to stay in that energy because you know that that energy is painful, it's detrimental. There's all the water imagery here in your reading as well. I mean, there with the Seven of Pentacles, you don't see that he's necessarily watering this plant, but there's like some rays of light coming out of his fingertips. We have the Setting My Own Course. This person's paddling in the water. The King of Cups behind them. There's a sailboat and this vast body of water, and then of course it's the King of Cups, so it's a water sign. And so there's some way that you're doing this where you're really tracking the emotion of a situation. Or maybe you're just tracking your own emotions within, and that is helping you navigate. But whatever the case, your gift is that you're able to easily redirect when needed. You're not afraid to stand up for yourself. You're not afraid to take a risk. Even if you feel the fear, you allow yourself to feel that, but then do it anyway. It doesn't stop you. It doesn't ground you. You're like this fish, just kind of like chilling, swimming through the water, seeing what's going to happen next. So is there anything else for pile 2, their spiritual gifts, spirit, that you want to come through? We have the Six of Wands. And the Moon, another water card. This is Pisces energy. Is it? Or, yeah, Pisces. Six of Wands. So it's like somehow, and no one quite knows how this happens, maybe yourself included, you always come out on top, even when you make a decision that seems like it would not work in your favor, because you're so connected to your own emotional body and the movement of spirit through those emotions, through that water. You're able to sense what's required of you, and you don't fight that, even if it's hard for you. It's like you have this sense, okay, here's what God would ask of me, or here's what's needed now, and then you just step into that and things flow for you. It's really interesting. I mean, this must look from the outside like you know what's going to happen, or actually, why don't we ask that? I'm a little curious how did others experience this in you? What does it look like from the outside? Four of Pentacles in reverse. It's like you're not tied to anything. It almost looks like you're emotionless with the King of Swords, which couldn't be further from the truth. Like you have so much emotion going through you, but you're able to connect spiritually to what needs to happen and put your own preferences and feelings aside so easily because you really do have that mastered. It's really a marvel is the word I'm hearing with this pile 2. Really cool ability and gift there. So I think this is your reading. I'd be curious to hear what you thought. Please leave me a like, comment, or subscribe to the channel. Let me know if this resonated for you, and I hope to see you in a future reading. Okay, pile 3, let's look at your spiritual gifts. We have the Six of Cups, the Six of Pentacles, Strength card in reverse. What role do boundaries play in your life, and how did they serve you? Then we also have initiating friendship, letting go of being right. Oops. And releasing anger towards family members. Your spiritual gifts. So a main one that I'm having come through first is forgiveness. You are So you know how there's some people in life who have their relationships, but as soon as one thing major goes wrong, they're like, I'm out, and they kind of break off that relationship. You know how to go through conflict resolution, forgive yourself and the other person, and build a stronger foundation later. This is deeply spiritual work. And if you don't think so, you've never had to forgive somebody for something truly atrocious. Most of us have had that experience in life. We've really, truly been wronged or targeted by someone, and then been forced or faced with the opportunity to forgive that person or not. So forgiveness and reconciliation, I mean, two very big things. Forgiveness by itself, I think, fundamentally and primarily includes forgiving of the self. I'll tell you what I mean. So even, let's say, God forbid, you're in some kind of abusive situation where someone targeted you and took advantage of you, and this could be in any way, financially, relationally, physically, on and on. Even if that happened, there, of course, would be anger, hurt about what that person did for you. But most often, I think where the first place we go as humans is we go to, why did they do that to me? What did I do wrong? How did I bring that on myself? Why did they think that was okay to do to me? Why wasn't I strong enough? Whatever, all the questions and on, when most of the time it actually had nothing to do with us. It had to do with who that person was or the state that they were in at the time. But forgiveness of ourselves also includes recognizing, oh, I'm not in control here. Because if you think about it, like telling yourself those statements, like if only I just hadn't gone there that day, or if only I would have screened them better and not opened myself up in the way that I did. That gives us this illusion that it was somehow within our power to impact what happened. And sometimes that's true, but more often it was never in our control what was going to happen with that individual or with that situation. Even more so, I'm hearing, like, if this person is a parent, meaning you're a child, you have no power in that situation. There's nothing that you can do to really change that. And so forgiveness not only includes, forgiving yourself for whatever mistakes you think you may have made. It's accepting that I'm not in control of this situation, and then also offering forgiveness to the other person, which opens you up to a lot of fear and feelings of loss of safety. Right? Because if I keep myself angry at this person and separated from them, then they can never hurt me again. Which, of course, again, is another illusion. But anyway, so if you're listening to this right now, pile 3, you'd be like nodding your head, like, yep, learn that. You may have a slightly different way that you think about it, but it's a lesson. I wouldn't even say that's a lesson you've mastered, because this is a spiritual gift we're talking about. It's like you fundamentally, coming into this life, have already understood the way that we work as humans, whether that's like psychologically or spiritually, relationally. You already understood this. And not only the forgiveness piece, but you also have reconciliation. The power of reconciliation is a spiritual gift. This really reminds me of my friend Rebecca, who I feel has this. But when I think of the spirit and the gift of reconciliation, it's the willingness and the ability to open yourself up without fear, to humble yourself in what you may need in a situation, and find common ground with someone else. Find a way to come back together in acceptance, in healing, and solidarity. And I think one of the ways you may do this, pile 3, is you see the small child in every person. So even if this is like a very scary person who committed a very violent act against you, let's say, even if that was the situation, you still see the hurting little child in them that was also scared, that was also just trying to feel safe or to get a need met in one way or another. You you get that. And you get how even when those things happen to us, as terrible as they are in some strange way. Oh, I don't want to say a gift. How do I say that better? I will say not a gift. They are God at work. Like, you understand that there are multiple purposes for whatever that event is. And I'm not trying to suggest that everything happens for a reason or something like that. It's not exactly what I'm saying. It's more that everything that happens in life has value, has spiritual value, and can be fertile soil. And in particular, these kinds of experiences are very painful, excruciating, overwhelming at times, and very fertile soil. And you see that, and you don't want to waste that spiritual energy. Do you see that there's like a figure 8 here of energy that's going around the 6 of Pentacles that I'm drawn to? So I want to make sure, though, that I'm not giving you the wrong impression. Like, I am not in no way saying that you are a compassionate doormat or someone who has let others just cross your boundaries over and over. I'm really getting more the vibe of a very settled, very grounded, very strong person who, when something like that has happened, has been very clear and loving in explaining what can't happen again, but also open to compassionately resolving the situation. So, and I'm hearing that there may have been moments for some of you where you've acted out of character, where you've been very, very angry or said hurtful or unfair things. And we're all human. It doesn't mean you don't have this gift, because still, I think if you think about it and you look at yourself from the outside, you still have the perspective that all can be healed, all can be restored, and whatever's happened here can be used for our good if we allow that. And part of that work has to happen individually for ourselves, but also it can happen together. So if you're listening and this is really triggering for you or overwhelming for you, and you're thinking about one or more situations you've had in your life that you haven't forgiven, don't want to forgive, don't want to think about, I would just say in that case, this is likely not your reading. And I would go back and pick a different pile, because the folks that have this gift, they might have moments of being triggered, but they always come back to this principle. And there's nothing wrong with having a trigger around that. It doesn't mean, no one's a better or worse person. I'm not shaming anybody for that. But this is something that's hard for most of us. And those that are in this pile and have this gift, it's like their processing time is faster than most, where they're able to let things go and progress. So what else about pile 3 do you want them to hear, Spirit, about their spiritual gifts? The spiritual gifts that you want them to hear about today. Emperor in reverse, King of Pentacles, Queen of Swords in reverse, King of Cups in reverse, and the 10 of Cups. I'm almost getting like these are some of the unreasonable people you've had to deal with. Someone dictatorial and controlling, someone only about their money, doesn't see like the human element, someone unfair and very aggressive in their speech, someone that can't talk about their emotions directly, and so they leak out sideways and are very passive aggressive. Yet somehow you are able to kind of go through that with everyone and come out the other side. And again, I'm looking at the two little children here on the Ten of Cups, you're able to see the small child in each of them. You may even be something like a therapist or a social worker or a spiritualist, someone who's a people helper that helps people heal these issues. Even if they're not like conflicts with you individually, they could also be like internal conflicts those people have within themselves that you help them transmute. But where it all comes from is the spiritual gift that you have of seeing how we're all the same. Even if someone does something truly atrocious to us, you're able to view it through the eyes of love and understanding, and how, what's that quote? But by the grace of God go I. Okay, pile 3, that was your reading. I hope it resonated for you. Please leave me a like, comment, or subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you next time. Okay, pile 4, let's find out about your spiritual gifts. We have the High Priestess. I mean, you already know whatever I'm going to tell you. Haha, tarot joke. The Magician, 10 of Swords in reverse, 8 of Swords. I begin comparing myself to others when, and healthy giving. I think you would have loved to compare yourself to someone at some point, pile 4, that could give you an example of, this is what it's like to be pile 4 and be at your best and grow in your gifts and in your happiness and in your power in life. You didn't have that. With the healthy giving card, I think you came from a lot of codependent relationships. You know, the kind of relationships that always have kind of rules or trades attached, like, I'll give you this, but then I expect this in return. Like, I'm your parent and I will provide for you, but I expect in return that you act this, and that way in public, that you believe this and that you choose this profession, live in this area, see me this many times a week, whatever. I think you've had a lot of experience with those kind of, I guess, transactional relationships would be another way to say it. But I think you also have learned to notice those and stay far away. So any person that you kind of get a whiff of, that it's going to be that kind of like transactional setting, you just keep your distance. How do I say this? Okay, so your spiritual gifts, you see all this spiritual energy coming in through the crown of the High Priestess, the crown chakra. And then with the Magician, there's like a very similar energy coming out of the hand. It almost looks like it's flowing from this card to this card, in fact. So it's almost like you have this divine inspiration, or spirit inspires you to do something, say something, and you're able to make it happen. I mean, this certainly could be, you could be something like a tarot reader or a pastor, someone who speaks on behalf of spirit in one capacity or another. You could also just be a very missional person, especially in your work. I'm getting a very like work vibe with this pile. Like your work is your spiritual gift, is your mission. So whatever it is you're doing for work is a spiritual gift. And I want to say, like, I know there's at least one of you out there that is like an admin, administrative assistants or something like that. And so you might be thinking like, how does this spiritual work? It totally is. It still applies. And let me help you understand why. I think like really practical tasks get a bad rap and are often seen as not spiritual because it's, I don't know, mopping the floor or whatever. But any kind of task, if you're bringing to it a spiritual energy, is transformational, becomes spiritual. We think of certain things as spiritual because they're directly talking about the spirit or relating to the spirit, such as if I'm if I'm a spiritual leader and I'm giving an inspired talk or something. That can sometimes be seen as more spiritual because it's specifically trying to shift hearts and minds around a particular spiritual topic. But that can be done very effectively, and in some ways, I would say more effectively without words. For example, let's say you're an administrative assistant to someone, and unbeknownst to you, the person that you're supporting has had a history of betrayal, of people stealing from them, turning on them, being disloyal, or using them in whatever way they can. You could, by your role, let's say being like always responsive, very responsible to whatever their needs might be, anticipating their needs, helping them out when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient for you. I mean, I could go on, but there could be any number of ways by you like showing up and performing what might seem like not necessarily a spiritual task, is serving a spiritual purpose. But you would know this with the high priestess and the magician. You might not know exactly why it's important, but you would know with this client of mine or with this boss of mine, I must be consistent. I must be available. I must show them and give them that spiritual energy because it's needed by their soul. At some level, whether or not you articulate that to yourself, you know that. And of course, there could be hundreds of other examples. Any job you have, this could apply. But it's like you are being directly steered by Spirit to be the hands and feet of Spirit in the world. And the message I'm getting with this Ten of Swords in reverse, it's an interesting one. The reason that this is your spiritual gift is Spirit wants the world to know that God is not dead. And whatever it is that you're doing to support others, to show up for them, this is the message they receive. So the example I gave about like the boss with the really loyal employee, let's say, somehow through that series of interactions, they would come to learn there is a God. There is something bigger than me. There's a reason for living. I mean, something really deep. And you might, I know that there's at least one of you out there that's like, oh, come on. I'm kind of laughing at this. And I totally get it because it seems too big for the kinds of things you might be doing at times. But you're not in charge of that. You're not in charge of how something lands. And you are faithful, though, to do and say and act in the ways that Spirit is asking you to. You have that open channel and you're doing that, and you're not really tracking the results. You know, it's kind of none of your business. With this Eight of Swords, too, it's like, I see nothing, I hear nothing. It doesn't matter. I don't think this is going to be my pile when I go back and pick one, but I could see how this would be a tarot reader or some kind of spiritualist like this, because you receive the messages from Spirit and you don't know whether that's going to impact anybody or plant any kind of seed. You can't know that unless someone lets you know that back in return. And so it is this energy of like, I'm connected to Spirit, I do what I'm told, and that is my meaning, that is my happiness, that is my job satisfaction, let's say. With this, I begin comparing myself to others when, and then there's a blank there. I mean, obviously this card, I think, is meant to inspire some like thought about when do I compare myself to others and why is that bad for me? I think you have the gift of knowing like this is a losing game. Like comparing myself to others, like no thank you. How is that going to get me anywhere positive? You know that that's not going to get you anywhere positive, and so you don't go down that road. So I feel like that there's a blank there because you're just like, I don't begin comparing myself to others. I'm just going to skip that part. So what else for pile 4, Spirit, do you want them to know about their spiritual gifts? I wish there was a word for this that you're doing. It's really cool. Make up a word for it in the comments if you want to. Be curious to see what you come up with and how it feels for you. So pile 4, spiritual gifts. What more do you want them to know? I'm hearing that that's kind of it. We have the 7 of Cups. Yeah. It's kind of like, don't worry about it, Spirit's saying. Like, don't think about it. You don't need to. Like, you're doing the way that you've been showing up spiritually and interacting with this gift is exactly right. If you feel like you should know more about exactly what you're doing and why, no, you don't need to. And Spirit just wants you to continue having the connection that you do and letting that be the most important thing. How cool, pile 4. Thank you for your work in the world. Please leave me a like, comment, or subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next reading. Hey, pile 5, let's check out your reading. We have the King of Wands, the 5 of Cups in the reverse, allowing things to happen, and identify an experience you are anticipating and take note of your expectations. Consider if you may be inflating a desired outcome or envisioning an unobtainable experience. Okay, so I have to tell you something funny. I did not know this was in this pile. I just kind of dealt out the piles without looking at them. And in the past, I have picked this card. So as you may have heard me mention, this is from an Enneagram Type 4 deck, and I picked up this card and I was like, F you, deck creator. Like, this is ridiculous. Take note of my expectations, see if I can have more reasonable outcomes I'm envisioning. I don't know why it hit me so sideways, but I was very, very salty about this card, and so I'm just really curious how it's going to go into your reading. Why is it important for me to have mentioned that right now? I think because you might have a similar reaction, pile 5. You may have heard me say this before, but like the Wands energy, the fire energy, I really consider as like the breath of Spirit or spiritual energy, the life force of God, the wind of God that blows through the world. And the best way to stifle the movement of Spirit, in my opinion, is to be too reasonable. Let's take note of my expectations. Could I be inflating a desired outcome? Like, get out of here. Like, you can F right off card in this reading. And I think the reason it's here in relation to your spiritual gifts is that's kind of like the energy you embody. Maybe not as sophomoric as how I was just describing it for myself, but more like, hey, if we don't put this out there, if we don't see if this is truly what Spirit wants to do in the world, then we'll never know. Let's not dwell over things that have gone wrong. Let's not try to overplan or overthink this. If I feel inspired and like God wants me to do this, say this, go here, be this or that, I'm going to follow that. And I will learn through my experiences whether that indeed was Spirit or not, and I will grow. But I know that if I sit at home in my room and do nothing and never let impulse or inspiration impact me, that's no way to live. And it's not a spiritual life. And you're right about that. A spiritual life does include trust and surrender. And sometimes on the outside that can look like going where the wind takes you. What more I'm hearing about this for you and the way it's a spiritual gift is I don't even know if this is true what I'm about to say, but I guess that's not my job. It's my job just to convey the message. So you hold the truth. You're a messenger, pile 5. And if you've known that, but you haven't been sure, like, what is your message, here's one that's coming through for you. The message is, there are 2 main ways that spirit interacts with us. One is through a still, small voice. It's quiet, it's centered, it feels homey, at peace, and at rest. The other is fire. It's inspiration. It's get out of your seat, go do that thing, go take that action. Yesterday isn't soon enough. Action is required of you. And you are like this ball of fire in the world that is pointing to that second way. Maybe you are in a culture or a place in the world that when God is talked about, it's really focused on just the first way, which can sometimes be conflated with also like safe and practical, especially, again, I'm getting that like from this card. Safe, practical, reasonable, well-researched, well thought out. And yeah, I mean, that's not wrong. None of that is wrong. But you bring the wisdom that is the fire. I'm thinking of Moses, actually. There's actually this interesting Netflix documentary. Oh, what's it called? Well, it's a Netflix documentary about Moses. It might just be called Moses, who I think is a really interesting figure since he's so heavily featured in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. But anyway, there's a part of the story about Moses where he comes across a burning bush, and he tries to get closer to it, and he's like, what's going on with this burning bush? And then he hears a voice, and he realizes that it's God coming through the bush. And God says, take off your sandals, for you are on holy ground. And so Moses immediately does that, like falls down to the ground and is like just listening, like just hiding his face and listening to what God has to say. And I think that's coming to mind because both like the reaction of Moses, but also the way that God is showing up in that like burning bush. What's important about that, Spirit, to highlight? It's like you're both sides. Obviously, you as a spiritual person, you are a representative of spirit on earth, but you're also the recipient. And I'm hearing that God has a lot of trust for you, because when confronted with moments where you feel face to face with spirit, you take off your sandals, metaphorically. You humble yourself, you listen, you ask, say, I am your servant. What is it you'd have me do? And also in the times where you feel you have a message to deliver that's a spiritual message, and sometimes it has some fire behind it. Maybe if you are a person of religion, either past or present, you might have related with like prophets of one kind or another. Either like I'm not sure who the Jewish prophets are. I mean, obviously there's the prophets of Islam, and then in the Old Testament in Christianity. Well, yes, those are the same ones for Judaism. Duh, Jan. Anyway, so you might really, relate to some of the kinds of messages those persons have to bring and the ways that they have to live. So I think your messages that you bring sometimes aren't even that easy to swallow, but you do it faithfully, and you do it both as a recipient of the message yourself as well as a deliverer. What else here for pile 5 and their spiritual gift? So to put your spiritual gift more simply, prophecy would be the name of the spiritual gift. What else for pile 5? What would you want them to know? What do you want them to know about their spiritual gift, Spirit? 7 of Pentacles. The Star and Justice. Ooh, Justice is such a good card for a prophet, isn't it? I feel like prophets are often bringing a message of justice, like maybe some condemnation feeling in there, but there's a grace undertone. With the star here, that's always about hope, healing, possibility. You have a gift of being able to say something really hard or really harsh that many people would find really difficult to hear, but you do it in such a way that people are able to change, to shift, to hear what's being said and actually put it in practice. And they may not know exactly how with the Seven of Pentacles to react to what they're hearing, but it's almost like your message shocks them into doing something, trying something different, and that puts them on the path of hopefully getting on their right path, essentially. I want to pull one more card for those of you out there that might be listening that are like, I don't know that I've exactly done this, or I'm not exactly relating to this. I feel like what Spirit's going to want me to do is I'm going to pull a card and then I'm going to give an example. The World card. Aha, okay. So here's an example, may not apply to everyone. An example of when you have used this spiritual gift. So let's say someone you know has had a major ending. So that could be someone has died, there's been a job loss, a divorce, any other kind of major ending, okay? You have spoken over them with authority and saying, like, this is why that needed to happen for the growth and health of everyone involved. Obviously, like, that's not a fun message to hear. No one wants to be told, like, here's why this terrible thing is a good thing. But the time when you said that, you felt connected to God, connected to Spirit, and like you needed to say it, and to say it bluntly. And regardless of how that person reacted in the moment, I'm here to tell you that that was a spiritual seed that was planted, and that that person has thought about that months, years, a decade later for someone out there. And it has changed the way that they think about God and the way they think about their life. It's opened up the possibilities in their mind of what can be a spiritual event or not, and how it's possible to connect to God or not. And that is spiritual work that you were used to do. Interesting. If that story resonates for you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments in particular. I'd be curious to hear that. I really feel the power of this pile 5. It's like, it's very palpable. The fire is intense. And I really do get the sense that, like, not only is that something you carry in you, but in the moments when you need to say something, Spirit also moves through you in those moments, which is just so cool. Thank you so much for coming by, Pile 5. I appreciate you being here. Please leave me a like, comment, or subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in a future reading.